Hello, dear patients, your favorite doctor here, Dr. Plague, and today I want to talk to you about what it's like to be a gamer in a third world country, going through that time I lost my gaming passion, how I recovered it, and the 8th generation of consoles. Last time, we ended up in the verge of a massive tragedy, something terrible that pushed me away from games for a couple of years. Back in late 2011, my Wii broke down. It was still able to turn on, but I couldn't read games properly. The lens had broken down, and back then, I had no money or way to repair it. I thought that, since I had missed out on so many games, I could get an Xbox 360 for a cheap price and continue playing, but that wasn't meant to happen, and I faded into obscurity. But what happened in the meantime? Time didn't stop because of me, of course, and while I was having an identity crisis, the Nintendo 3DS was released. The Nintendo 3DS had a, let's say, very rough launch. The price of admission was quite high at the time, and given that people here in Play Country were beginning to enjoy the boom of portable piracy with the original DS and the PSP, no one really thought about giving the 3DS a chance. Add to that the fact that the launch titles for the 3DS were less than stellar, and it would take months for a truly attractive game to release for the console. And then there was the PS Vita. Oh, the Vita, we hardly knew ya. The Vita was released here in Play Country in February 2012 and had the same regional issues as the PSP. It was extremely expensive and the games were hard to find. But this one had an extra issue, a very, very serious issue. It had proprietary SD cards. You couldn't just use any regular SD card on your Vita, you had to get the official one from Sony, and let me tell you, they were very hard to find here in the country. Needless to say, the Vita was dead on arrival, so much that we don't even need to talk about it. It doesn't matter, so let's move. What was that? Huh, guess it was nothing. Let's move on and talk about the 8th generation of consoles. The 8th generation of consoles wasn't as hyped as the previous generation, with the PS4 and the Xbox One coming at a strange time for gaming here in Play Country. There was a huge spike in the modded console scene, and with a better access to information and tools on the internet, people could easily hack the consoles themselves. So after these techniques became well known and easy to perform, the PS3 popularity went through the roof, almost to equal that of the Xbox 360. The same problem that plagued some of the other consoles before also applied to the PS4 and the Xbox One. The consoles were too pricey at launch and couldn't be hacked or modified yet, so people stuck around with their previous gen consoles for a while longer before giving the chance to the PS4 and the Xbox One. In the meantime, I was discovering the wonders of emulation on PC, something that a lot of people got to enjoy way before me, but I was totally ready to relive my childhood and also play all the elusive games that I could never play back in the day. Speaking of emulators, we can really avoid talking about PC gaming, since it started to really come onto its own here in Play Country around that time. A lot of people just said fuck you to the consoles and now thought about PC as the ideal platform to experience their games. To each his own, I guess, but I never shared that particular mindset, even though I really love emulators, and the best, and sometimes only way of experience them is using a PC. The rise of PC gaming was also an important factor in the overall lack of interest of consoles at the beginning of the generation. But after spending some time with emulators, I craved for something more. I wanted to go back to get a console again, and I got back into the console gaming when my friend Chad gave me a 3DS for Christmas back in 2015. I had a lot of time to make up for my absence and... Wait! Mr. Doctor! Aren't you forgetting something? Something about Nintendo? What about Nintendo? Well, this! Oh, dear lord! Yes, I kinda forgot to mention this poor thing, the Wii U, the first of the 8th generation consoles to be released back in November 2012. This was the 8th generation console I chose for myself. Yeah, I know, I'm a moron. It's safe to say that the Wii U was the least successful of the 8th generation consoles, even with Microsoft's questionable policies for the Xbox One at the beginning of the generation, with borrowed games and requiring Kinect to be connected at all times. There were actually really few people who owned a Wii U in Play Country, and the reasons were obvious. The Wii U had a very little third-party support, so you couldn't get all the cool games the other consoles were getting, which is always a little off-putting. The controllers were a little too gimmicky for the people in here in Play Country. The screen in the controller was used in some games to great avail as a gameplay mechanic, but in others it was just a way to display a map or just straight up show nothing or an image of the game cover. This became more and more common as time went by, and developers realized that investing in the Wii U was a waste of time and money. The PS4 and Xbox One were released here in November 2013, but it would take a while longer before they really took off here. It could be said that Sony won this generation of consoles here in Play Country, but not by much in regards to Microsoft. Nintendo? Well, they did pretty poorly overall with the Wii U. There was also a shift in how the retailers approached this new generation. One big change was that they didn't sell pirated copies of the games anymore, given that people could just hack the consoles and download the games on their own. They started selling legitimate copies of the games, something that wasn't very common before. The beloved leather catalogs disappeared, for the most part, since the stores still sold pirated copies of older consoles, and now getting original games was easier than ever, but still kinda expensive. It is also worth noting that the newer consoles weren't hacked before you bought them, unless you got them second hand, and you had to take your console to a special place to be hacked in case that you were afraid of doing it yourself and breaking it. Yet the whole hacking scene for these new consoles took a couple of years to take off. And then, in 2017, something amazing happened. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, Nintendo released the Nintendo Switch, a hybrid console that shook the system and turned heads all over the place. A console that was both a home console and a portable one that can play games like a full-fledged open-world Zelda, Skyrim, and more. Even the people that made fun of me when I bought my Wii U were impressed by this feat and wanted a piece of the action. So of course you must know by now what I did. As soon as the Switch was up for pre-order here, I signed up. Now you must be wondering, where did you pre-order consoles and games? Well, it's not that rare, to be honest. Most big retailers have pre-order services, but as you already know, big retailers here raise the prices a lot, so it wasn't a very good option. Luckily for us inhabitants of this plagued land, there are people and independent businesses that take care of our gaming needs, importing both consoles and games and somehow having them ready a day or two after launch. I like to call them dealers, since it seems appropriate to our own representative white play culture. But again, for some reason, life mocked me, and even though I signed for pre-order, I never got a confirmation to transfer the money and buy my console. So in a fit of rage and revenge, I did the only logical thing. I went to my favorite game store and got myself a shiny, new PS4. It was the only choice, okay? I had been thinking about getting a PS4 for a while at that point and be able to experience all the games I couldn't play on the Wii U, plus all the amazing Sony first-party exclusives, so I dove headfirst into it and it was great. Needless to say, I got my Switch a couple months later after things calmed down and I was finally able to find one for purchase, and I've been enjoying my games ever since. It's been quite a journey since I was just a little doctor child up to this moment, and now that I'm a full-grown adult doctor, I stuck to buying only original games and consoles and stepped away completely from piracy. Oh no. No, not you. No, go back to your cage, you fiend. No, get away from me. Ah! Alright, I guess I have one more story to tell about this.